All right. Great. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order today. Drew, if you could do a roll call. Good afternoon. Start with Director Melanie Backby. You've gone her way. Director Susan Harvey.
Here.
Director Ariel Kelly.
Here.
Director Janice Cater Thompson.
Here.
Director Gerard Judice.
Here.
Director Nisa Hinton.
Here.
Director Sandra Lowe.
Here.
Director Rosa Reynosa.
Here.
Director Chris Corsi.
Here.
Director David Rabbit.
Here.
Vice Chair Linda Hopkins.
Present.
And Chair Chris Rogers. Here. And Melanie Bagby has just entered. Excellent. We'll go to public comments for items not on the agenda. If you have a comment that falls within the jurisdiction of SCTA and RCPA, but don't see it listed, feel free to approach the podium.
Afternoon. Adjourn. Bob Anderson, live in Healdsburg. Bob Anderson, live in Healdsburg. I just bring to you, a number of you last week, in a meeting that was held not far from here. The discussion included setting rates for the next 2 years. The term was used, over collection, to describe what is essentially an old fork in the road. Is the better course to lower rates and benefit individual customers, or use those kept funds to secure additional community-wide climate solutions? Much will depend on staff's assessment and estimation of future expenses and revenues. May I suggest consideration of a simple alternative, not 60-30-10, but 30-60-10. Looking at last year's numbers, this would essentially move $21 million, a direct investment in climate action. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do we have anybody else in the room for public comment? Drew, do we have any hands on Zoom? No hands on Zoom, Chair. Great. We'll move on to our consent calendar then. Madam Executive Director, do you have anything on the consent calendar?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are several items on the consent calendar, the meeting minutes from July, quarterly financials, as well as one contract amendment and resolution of support related to a project in Sonoma County.
Do we have any questions from the board? Seeing none, we'll go to public comment on the consent calendar. Is there anybody in the room who'd like to provide comment? Seeing none, Drew, anybody on Zoom? No hands raised. I'll bring it back and entertain a motion.
So moved. Ariel from Healdsburg. Second. Patati.
Motion from Director Kelly, second from Director Harvey. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. We'll keep moving. That was a unanimous vote, Drew. Let's go on to item 5.1.
Thank you. Actually, 8.1. Right? Oh, 5.1. Sorry.
Suzanne's just
I'm
in
on the
such a
wrong
hurry to get. Yeah.
8.1 is on.
Trying to go to the end of the meetings.
I flipped the wrong agenda, my bad. Before BC starts this item, 5.1, I did want to introduce our newest addition to the staff. Anna Oliva is here in the back, and she is helping on the Bayren and water upgrade save programs and all of the other related RCPA work. So we're thrilled to have her. BC.
Wonderful, thank you. Good afternoon, board. Good afternoon, Chair Rogers and others members of the board. My name is BC Caps, climate change program specialist here, working with RCPA as part of the RCPA team. And I wanted to present an update for you today on the work that we have been doing on our greenhouse gas inventory. And we are getting ready to embark on our next iteration of that inventory for that will be released next year. And I want to give you an update on the work there and on a greenhouse gas, a climate dashboard that we have been working with a number of the jurisdictions on building. So go to the next slide, and I've got my own controls. Very good. Here, just a little bit of a brief history, it's going back a few years. RCPA first started working on compiling greenhouse gas inventories for the entire Sonoma County community. Countywide inventory started in 2010. That work started and was really looking as part of the Climate Action 2020 project. So in that case, we set a 2010 baseline and did a 1990 backcast which then set those numbers, and those are the numbers that we've been working against, that 1990 backcast as part of our climate goals for the number of years. That update was updated in 2018 using 2015 data, was updated again in 2020 using 2018 data, and then updated in 2022 using 2020 data. You can see we've been doing this about every 2 years. And so we are embarking now on that next step of collecting activity data and compiling the information for the inventory that will be released next year in 2024, which will use the 2022 data, and will then continue on us being able to look at those trends. We now have approximately 30 years of data that we're basically looking at to look at trends, and are at this point aiming towards the goal that's in the orange at the bottom of the screen there. Those are our climate mobilization strategy goals. So that's really setting a target of carbon neutrality countywide by the year 2030, which equates to an approximately an 80% reduction from the 1990 levels. And we're then looking at additional carbon sequestration opportunities to kind of reduce that remaining 20% so that we can kind of account for it. And so moving on then, this is just a slide kind of that shows some of those trends over those 30 years. This was presented to you this past year, I believe. So this is not new information, but just wanted to show kind of the information that we're collecting. And I wanted to show here an example of the type of graph that we've been producing and kind of making available on our website. We have this incredible body of knowledge. We have lots of data. We produce the graphs in Excel. In the past years, some of those graphs have been a bit interactive on the website, but really at this point, we produce the inventory and we produce a whole series of kind of static graphs like this that are useful for the jurisdictions, useful for our planning, but there's actually kind of seeing that we can take that next step. And so that's what we're kind of working on conjunction with the next inventory. So here to talk about a little bit of some of the inputs that go in the data that makes up these inventories. Really, we follow the ICLEI Communitywide protocol that kind of is the nationwide standard, and that splits the data into 5 different groups. First is building emissions that come from building energy, electricity, natural gas, water use in buildings. A number of stats having to do with transportation based around vehicle miles traveled and emissions factors. Water and wastewater, that's mainly the pumping that's used for water and for water conveyance and pumping waste and processing wastewater. Looking at the solid waste that is collected and especially the organic component of solid waste that's collected and gives off methane emissions, and then looking for emissions from calculated emissions from agricultural production throughout the county. So those are the main inputs that go into our inventory. And then in addition, and kind of in parallel, but separate, a number of the local jurisdictions also, or I should say a handful of the local jurisdictions also compute their own, compile their own community inventory that kind of looks at their subset of the county. And then several jurisdictions have also recently completed municipal operations inventories where they're really looking at their business operation. What's it take what is the emissions that are associated with their buildings, with that single set of buildings? So we have all this data available. Through this work, because we at RCPA kind of are looking at the countywide level and the number of jurisdictions are looking from kind of the bottom up, we have been working with a small jurisdictional working group, and we've met several times, kind of representatives, some key representatives from Cloverdale, Rohnert Park, Petaluma, Healdsburg, Santa Rosa, Windsor, and from the county of Sonoma, kind of talking about what the inventory, both what the inventory numbers are telling us, but then also saying like, what are the additional needs? What are the services that we here at RCPA, how could we present the information back to make it a little bit more useful? So one of the things that we have been talking about is the ability to take our inventory data and make it available in a much more dynamic and interactive format that could be input, could be then embedded as part of our website and available for additional use. And so we, as part of that working group, really been talking about kind of what are the features that we would want to look into and we would want to incorporate as part of a dashboard if we were going to go down that road. We had been contacted by several software vendors that had put in inquiries wondering if we were interested in kind of using and so we did a bit of a conducted some interviews and just did a bit of searching, kind of like trying to find what is the software that's out there that's available and what are these features that are available. So I wanted to step through really quick, just kind of some of the basics of what we're thinking about. You know, the ability to have all of this data to drill down into it, to look at it by greenhouse gas by sector, by year, by the different jurisdiction. What about total GHG emissions versus per capita? I don't know if any members of the board remember, but when I presented here a few months ago on our the current inventory, there's actually a completely different story that's shown when one looks at total emissions per jurisdiction versus per capita emissions. So that's a really interesting one. Looking at our reduction targets over time, displaying this as part of an emissions kind of in a map so that one can not just see tables and numbers, but also look around the county and see where are emissions higher or lower. Thinking about building in some jurisdictional profiles, and then possibly then making some of this data available for direct download, which is something that we've never really, we have the data here, we're more than willing to share it with jurisdictions, but it's always been, we've never actually made it available, so it's just kind of like a grab and go situation. And then we're also very interested in looking at other indicators or metrics that are available that help tell the story, that help their piece of information that aren't used in the calculations to compute the emissions, but are basically help tell the story. And I'll come back to that in just a minute. Really quickly here, a couple of the types of users that we're really thinking of. Obviously, local government staff, ourselves here, even as staff members at RCPA, jurisdictional staff, the planning departments, public works that work, I think, at all of your jurisdictions. We know that there are some community advocates throughout the whole community. They're very interested in digging into this. They're wanting to know what's going on as well. And then there's also, I think, just kind of the general public user. Then there may be, people that are like, hey, what is all this? What is going on? Why are we, what are these efforts? So kind of thinking about those three large kind of user groups. And then just a few of the use cases we're talking about, displaying activity data, identifying the sectors where the biggest impacts are, looking at these resilience metrics and seeing, how they play in. Also want to be able to drill down and kind of present a page that's like, is a jurisdictional specific page that really kind of says, hey, let's zoom into this community and what are the kind of the emissions that are the inventory and emissions that are related there. So then talking a little bit about talking then about the other pieces of information, these resilience metrics that we're interested in. And this is in a process where we're kind of right now doing a lot of thinking about what are the types of information that help tell the story. And so we're even thinking about what are some of these other pieces of data we can integrate in: electricity and natural gas and water use, number of energy retrofits completed throughout the county, solar systems installed and the capacity of those solar systems, battery backup systems installed, heat pump water heaters installed, what projects have been financed through Skype, what the county's financing program, what are the total number of incentives that have been distributed through BayREN. There's a number of transportation metrics that are available. Solid waste metrics, metrics about carbon sequestration potential by jurisdiction, number of acres of permanent land protection. And I wanted to then kind of in this kind of sum up in this area within talking about, there's also a whole series of statistics and that we want to integrate in that are really around social equity issues as well. And just kind of some quick examples, the percent of population within a jurisdiction that's in an equity priority community, the number of care or FARA low income accounts. What is the median income in a certain area? Does that have any impact on, what are the emissions? What's the percentage of home ownership in those areas? So these are all pieces of information that we're hoping over time that we'll be able to build in and display alongside our kind of more standard, the greenhouse gas emissions information. I would then wanted to show here a couple of examples here before I go there. One of the things we've learned on this with thinking about this, I had mentioned that we had some software vendors that had approached us. We kind of evaluated the software that's available. We looked at a software that we kind of were being used for existing dashboards that we very much liked. Quickly came to a conclusion, or there was a recommendation that came from a staff member, I believe, with City of Healdsburg, that was really pointed us towards the Microsoft Power BI software tool. So that's a software tool that, as we've investigated more, and we actually see applications for it in this case, but across the board with actually visualizing any sort of data that can be presented as part of a table. So really, it's basically anything that can be displayed in Excel. This will help us to look at it better and make it more interactive. So just a couple of examples here. These are existing online dashboards that have been done by other communities looking at their emissions, also using the same software. So this is an example from, this is Drawdown, Georgia. None of these graphs that I've shown up here are interactive. I just took a screenshot, but you can kind of see, tables and numbers. They show the trends. We've got a map where we could zoom in on Sonoma County and kind of show what that, kind of how the different communities compare. Here's another example from state of Massachusetts. Again, just see the trends. It's got some reduction targets. It shows how the emissions split between the different sectors over time. Here's one, City of Columbus in Missouri, and kind of has that information in the back, showing it as different, showing it as bar charts and a circle chart there. So as a pie chart, so you can kind of see the flavor. We have all of these kind of this wide toolkit of kind of options that then exist within the Power BI software that we're kind of looking to use. And so kind of in summation then, and kind of to wrap this up, one of the things that we're looking at here is a kind of a really quick mock-up of what a dashboard for Sonoma County emissions data could really look like. I want to give my hats off on this work. I've been working very closely with our data analyst here with the SCTA team, Adam Garcia. He's been doing a fantastic job learning this software and really pointing us in the right direction, figuring out how these pieces fit together. And so a couple of the kind of the questions I wanted to queue up. If there's any input, this would be a fantastic time to let us know. Are there any other anticipated users that you can think of that would want to potentially use software, a dashboard like this? Are there other use cases that you can think of? And are there any other kind of resilience indicators and metrics that we should add to the list? Those are kind of some of the key questions that we're certainly thinking about internally right now, and would take any input today or anytime in the next few weeks. As far as our next steps, we're working on an internal prototype right now. Our hope is that we would be able to present something in some rough format before the end of the year, give you all kind of a next peek at what that kind of dashboard looks like. I'm going to schedule our next meeting with our jurisdictional partners so that we can kind of begin to get some feedback there. As I mentioned, then I'm starting on the actual calculations to do our next greenhouse gas inventory, which will add to this data. We expect that report will be wrapped up sometime in late spring or early summer, in which case then we'd be bringing back really the kind of what we're calling the dashboard 2.0. The hope is that we'll have kind of an early version available this year, and then we'll be able to kind of make amendments and make adjustments and additions to it over the course of the next few months. So with that, that's what I had to present to you. So I want to thank you for your time and answer any questions or take any feedback.
All right, thank you so much, BC. I'll go to Director Bagby to start.
Maybe you guys need to share that one. There you go. I gave it away because there were people weren't here before.
Thank you. So thanks, BC, for your great presentation. And I think you're just a initial 50,000 foot overview. I think you're definitely headed in the right direction with this dashboard, because so many of us have had success with a similar dashboard for our city budgets. And so I think that this is something that is, I've gotten very positive feedback from my constituents when a dashboard like this has been provided, and it just changes data into information.
Sure.
So, and I also appreciate the fact that we're not landing on something right away for all of our jurisdictions. We may eventually go that way, but we probably just need to do a little more testing, a little more cost assessment to figure out what might work for everybody, or if it does need to be larger jurisdictions on a more expensive suite and something less expensive for smaller jurisdictions. And then my other, by way of adding to what I'd like to see in the report, I'm not sure if SCTA staff is aware that there is a brand new data set that is available from SMART, and that is the multimodal sensors from the multimodal trail. They're taking readings of pedestrians and bicyclists with an accurate readout of how many people are you guys, do you have access to that data?
They're using our equipment.
They're using your equipment. And so do you have access to the data and parsing it out for Sonoma County? So I think that that's going to be a really great source of data just to show the greenhouse gas emission reductions that bike and pedestrian trails have, and hopefully be able to justify the cost of other trails, or extending the SMART and Great Redwood trails and multimodal trails, but also making a case for the greenhouse gas emissions and the economic development benefits that are being garnered from jurisdictions who have access to these multimodal trails. So I'm glad to hear that that data set will be included, and I'd love to see it, that kind of information pulled out on the dashboard as well.
Director Kelly?
I think this is really great. And I think being able to depict the data visually and selecting different jurisdictions or all the different categories and filters that you talked about, I think will be really useful. The one thing I did have, we're working on a local climate mobilization strategy for the city of Healdsburg. And one of the things we realized with our consulting team is just the language and the nomenclature. I think if you want this to be approachable for like end users, everyday people who are kind of arriving at this conversation maybe for the first time, or wanting to do a deeper dive for the first time, some of the internal language that we use, I'm just looking at the mock-up of the dashboard, things like under building energy stationary sources, or underwater related, you have water conveyance. I think just language that will be very user-friendly for like a third grader to understand would be a good starting place, because I just worry that someone might arrive at this thinking it's a useful tool, and then the language we're using is really off-putting because it's maybe a little bit has assumptions that people know what those things mean.
Sure.
So that's my only takeaway, is to really try to make the language as approachable as possible.
Very good, thank you. And in that case, we mean propane tanks and water pumps. So point taken, yes, simplify the language. Stationary sources doesn't actually, needs a lot more description. Thank you.
Vice Chair?
So I'm really, really excited about this. I think that having real-time public data is absolutely critical. And, one thing, and I don't know if this question is more for the county team and sort of the possibility of integrating the county dashboard, but when we talk about jurisdictions, if we're going to lump all of unincorporated Sonoma County into one category, it's not going to give us any level of community identity or specificity. So I would just say that maybe that's something that we can have conversations with the county around, is how can we call out potentially urban service areas, or broader regions, is it sort of census tracts? What are we kind of looking at? Because we won't really have that. That's such a huge catch-all. Doesn't really tell us where we're making progress and where we might be slipping. And then, so I don't know if you have any feedback on that now, or if that's something to kind of look into.
The only thing I'd say there is we are in direct communication with the team at the county's Climate Action and Resiliency Division. The consultant who built that recently did that inventory, has also built their initial dashboard using Power BI, and we're hoping that these two systems will be able to kind of march in parallel.
Wonderful. And then one other piece is, I don't want to get us to the point where we're like, pointing fingers at one jurisdiction, like, why aren't you building more bike miles? But I mean, it would be great to, let's say, showcase and highlight jurisdictions that are actually making meaningful investments, particularly in the bike and pedestrian side of things. So I wonder if there's almost a metric in terms of like, what is sort of the mileage or yardage or, number of projects that are really given with a complete streets focus, with a sort of bike and pedestrian safety focus. Because I think that would be something that's really useful to track. I think it was at the county, or I think it was the solar installation. We'd always have horse races between the supervisorial districts, and it's like, who has more solar panels than, you know what I mean? Like, make it kind of a fun thing of, who's leading the way on trying to support that bike and pedestrian, and also who has applications out. Because I know that some of us have desired projects that don't yet have funding. So, also kind of giving jurisdictions credit for coming up at least with the idea and trying to get that funded might be a nice thing to do too.
Yes, we know how to have a good time at the county of Sonoma.
Horse racing, it doesn't hurt horses.
It's great to have all this data in one place. I would just suggest that we do a couple things to take advantage of the audience that gets drawn to something like this. And one would be to have a tool where people can measure their individual footprint. And another would be to have some links on ways that people can lower their footprint, reduce it.
Thank you. Great report. Yeah, I'm sure you're working with Dustin in Roanoke Park. Part of our strategy was to hire a sustainability manager. And now we're going to take the deep dive and do the building needs assessment. So a lot of this data is really going to be very important as we begin that work. So just want to thank you, and definitely having this data specific to jurisdictions will really help us in order to make quality decisions as to, what the low hanging fruit is and how we go after it.
Director Cater Thompson.
I just want to follow through with what Mayor Kelly said, as far as making the language, simple, but we also want to make it simple for like students. We have, teachers in grammar school, junior high and high school, and the JC, working on climate. And so that they're actually starting at one level and that they can be brought up to the higher levels depending on the grade levels. And there'd be like definitions, because there seems to be different definitions. And so they're not muddled.
Director Rabbit.
Thank you very much. And just to echo that, I think it really, when I look at it, I look at the audience must be the jurisdictions themselves as opposed to the citizens of the county, because it really doesn't tell me as a citizen, what can I do specifically to really help turn that needle? And I do think that it'd be great to be able to dive into that a little further. The other thing I heard you say earlier on maybe it's related to the resilience side, open space preserved. And I'm not sure what ownership in and of itself, how that impacts greenhouse gas emissions. So I think we need to be careful too. I'm all for those things that are, tracking those things that are emitting greenhouse gas emissions. I think having preserved land, certainly, is a good thing, but I'm not sure how it relates to the other.
I think in that case specifically relate to potential for carbon sequestration over the longer term.
But we have so much carbon sequestration opportunity on land that's not protected.
Absolutely.
And I don't think if we're going to look at it that way, let's make sure the numbers are accurate.
And then BC, I'll just throw in a plug. I really like the idea of being able to download the data and use it as an open data portal. I think Director Rabbit's right that probably our audience is mostly cities and jurisdictions, but I'm a big believer in open data for particularly master's students and PhD students being able to do really cool things with the data that I can't tell you what it would be, but it's always great when it pops up and they've got a government source for it.
Mr. Chair, could I just correct my statement earlier to Director Bagby? Smart did end up buying their own equipment, but they have this similar equipment to what we have. And so I appreciate you raising it, because just a reminder to all of you that if your jurisdictions do want to do bike counts, we work with your public works departments or planning departments to provide the equipment in your jurisdiction wherever you might want it. So just minor correction on mine, sorry.
Great. Let's go ahead and go to public comment then on this item. If you have a comment on 5.1, go ahead and approach the podium. Seeing none, Drew, any hands on Zoom?
No hands raised on Zoom.
All right, I'll bring it back. Thank you so much, BC. I hope that that was helpful. Do you have anything that you wanted to add before?
No,
Move on?
no, we'll hope to be back in a couple of months to present a prototype for the first round of initial feedback. So thank you.
Very nice.
Great. Let's move on then to item 5.2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is actually under your name.
It is. So this is the professional services agreement with James Cameron. As most of you know, today is our illustrious executive director's last meeting. We have an item that is at the end of the agenda that I think we're all looking forward to honoring her. But after a nationwide search and interviews, all board members had a chance to participate in that. We did select James Cameron as the next executive director. Before you is the contract that we were able to negotiate with James. It is substantively similar to the contract that we currently have with our executive director. The pay scale on it is the pay range that was advertised when we went out to look for the candidate. It's actually at the bottom of the very bottom of the pay range, which is less than we currently pay our existing executive director. And with it, we get a phenomenal employee who has been dedicated to the organization, has a good vision moving forward, and I think is going to do a really good job for us. With that, I'll see if there's any questions on the item.
Yes, is there any comparisons that were made to other agencies? Are we in the ballpark? Are we too high, too low, to anything? Is that looked at all?
Yeah, and so the executive director can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe we did a survey of other jurisdictions when we first embarked on this to see what the appropriate salary range would be for somebody taking over this position. We are actually, I remember, below market for comparable positions, people who do this work.
Yeah, I would just add to that. There's sort of an annual review of the Bay Area executive directors, and then sometimes reaching beyond that to do an assessment. And for the North Bay, which is kind of our more comparables, North Bay and San Mateo, Sonoma County is sort of the lower middle part of the scale there.
Thank you for that. That was not in the staff report, and it's not information that's easily obtainable anywhere. So thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, let's go to public comment then on this item. If you'd like to provide public comment, approach the podium. Seeing none, Drew, any hands on Zoom?
No hands raised on Zoom, Chair Rogers.
All right, I'll bring it back and I will look for a motion.
So moved, run apart.
Second.
So I've got a motion from Roanoke Park and a second from Director Rabbit. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. James, do you want to say anything, or
You have to get out of the.
I see you hiding in the back?
Thank you very much. And it is an honor and a privilege to do this. And I really look forward to working with all of you and all of Sonoma County moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to item 5.3.
Anya is on her way.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and directors. I'm going to start off the budget presentation and share it with a number of my colleagues, but I'll make the introduction.
And just as a note, if we could, I'll stop and do questions from the board between each of the different budgets, but we'll actually do this all as one motion and do public comment when we've finished all of the presentations.
Thank you. So as you know, by October 31st of each year, the SCTA RCPA must adopt 4 final budgets for operations to continue. And the 4 final budgets cover the RCPA, the Transportation Fund for Clean Air, or TFCA program, Measure M, and SCTA General Operations. As the chair mentioned, staff will present all 4 budgets to you today with time for your questions in between each. And I will start off with the RCPA budget. So the RCPA was formed in 2009 by state legislation, and all staff are employees of SCTA. As was mentioned, RCPA is funded primarily from the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, which provides over 2/3 of our revenue, and about a third of our positions are funded through BayREN. Most of our remaining funding comes from contributions from each of your jurisdictions and our partner agencies on an annual basis. And staff, along with the board, continue to explore options to secure additional funding for local climate action. So I'll just go briefly through the changes between FY 22-23 and this new fiscal year. First, in terms of our revenues for RCPA, the main changes are that we see an increase in revenue for our new program specialist position, Anna, who you met earlier, expansion of the Water Upgrade Safe program, and the launch of new BayREN programs in 2024. Our revenue proposal also includes a 4.88% increase in local contributions, which is in line with the average annual consumer price index for the Bay Area from December 2021 to December 2022. And then we do see some decreases in revenue from the completion of our agreement with Sonoma Clean Power for a transportation electrification set of activities, and also a reduction in regional partner contributions. And then on the expenditure side, complementing the increase in revenue that we are receiving from BayREN, we are seeing an increase in staffing expenses for the BayREN program specialist, and also an increase in consultant expenses to support the expansion of Water Upgrade Save and other BayREN programs. And so the main changes from the preliminary budget, which we presented to you earlier this year, let's see. So we have an approval of some BayREN pilot projects, which will be taking place in 2024. We also forecast a decrease in Water Upgrade Save finance service due to slower than expected utility enrollment, and an updated forecast of the number of Water Upgrade Save projects that we expect to complete in 2024. And then lastly, for our climate poll, we initially thought in our preliminary budget that that would be taking place in this fiscal year, but we were able to complete it in the last fiscal year. And so the revenue and expenses from that are not included in this final budget. So with that, staff does recommend that the board consider adoption of the 2023-24 RCPA final budget. And I will pause there to see if there are any questions from the board before I turn it over to our next presenter.
Do we have any questions? All right, seeing none, we'll keep moving.
All right.
Thank you, Tanya.
So I'd like to introduce David to cover the TFCA and Measure M budgets.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Directors. I'm David Curtis, Assistant Director of Projects and Programming at SCTA, and I will be talking about the Transportation for Clean Air budget first, followed by the Measure M budget. So as you may know, the Transportation for Clean Air budget is a program out of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and we receive a portion of the funds through the 40% or regional county project manager program, and the rest is through a competitive program the Air District included. Back in May, the board approved the preliminary budget for TFCA along with the program of projects for fiscal year 23-24. And I should note that of the amount that we get annually from the Air District, 6.25% is for SCTA's administration of the program. For the changes in this fiscal year, there's a 5% increase in the revenue we estimate to get from the DMV, and there's a rollover in the amount that's decreased because of the number of projects that have been completed under budget. In this fiscal year, there's a lot of reductions from those projects in the cities that have been completed. There is a small increase in the amount going to Sonoma County Transit for new projects, and there's the about $10,000 increase in administration costs that is within a 6.25% administrative cap. So a lot of this is just projects that were completed from the last fiscal year and fewer projects coming in the new fiscal year. There are no changes from the preliminary budget that you approved back in May for this final budget that you're approving today. And with that, I would recommend to the board that you would adopt the fiscal year 23-24 TFCA final budget, and pause to see if we have any questions on that before we move on to the Measure M final budget.
Great. Any questions from the board on TFCA? Great, thank you so much. Let's go on to Measure M.
All right, and Measure M, as you know, is the transportation sales tax for Sonoma County. It was approved by the voters in 2004 and will expire at the end of fiscal year 24-25. It was extended with the Go Sonoma measure until 2045 and has had a very strong success of delivery and revenue. Now, currently, you're forecasting achieving 97% of the original revenue estimate from back in 2004. Most recently, this is a slide with an update from our sales tax consultant HDL. We're still outperforming the state when it comes to revenue, but due to the nationwide rural economy, things are a little slower now with Measure M, and we're still performing very well, but there's a slight increase in revenue compared to last fiscal year. Last year, we had a all-time high of Measure M revenue of 32.2 million. This year, we're forecasting a slight decrease about 1.5%, and that translates to about $500,000 less in revenue coming into next year's budget. As you know, Measure M has a number of categories. It includes the Highway 101 program, which is largely complete, the Local Streets Projects program, Local Street Rehabilitation program, which is a key funding source for your public works departments for road rehabilitation and maintenance, administration by the SCTA staff, transit, and rail. Comparing the Sonoma and Measure M programs, the key difference is the completion of the Highway 101 program and the smart startup costs. Because we do not have those big expenditure plans in the new Sonoma Act, there's a lot more emphasis on smoothly maintained roads and moving traffic, improving safety and bikes and pathways along with bus transit. This is a pie chart we presented to you in last month's projects and programming activities report, but you just want to highlight again that the new Sonoma Act has a lot more variety in it compared to Measure M. And instead of being very project specific, it's very much based on competitive projects. And we'll be coming back to you in a couple of months with the draft Measure Sonoma Strategic Implementation Plan to talk more about these programs in the future. As I mentioned earlier, there is a decrease in the Measure M budget forecasts for this upcoming fiscal year. I should note on this slide, this is based on accrual basis and also includes the Safe Routes to School federal funds that we receive for administration. We include them in the Measure M budget, so slightly different than the actual Measure M revenue shown earlier. Changes this fiscal year, there's an increase in contributions to other governments. That is really for all of our capital projects. The Hearn Avenue Interchange project will be going out to construction this fiscal year. We recently worked with Caltrans to open bids on that project, coming in under the estimate, so we're very happy about that. And there's also ongoing projects in construction right now on Fulton Road and Northwest Springs Road. Here you can see the revenues decreasing and the total expenses going up as those projects have expenses occurring this fiscal year. And with that, we'd recommend that you adopt the final fiscal year 23-24 Measure M budget, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Otherwise, I'll turn over to James Cameron for the final SCTA budget.
All right, Director Corsi.
Yeah, thanks, David. What do you attribute the projection of the decrease in the sales tax?
I think it's really just kind of worldwide economy with inflation, decreasing consumer spending, and as people would tighten their belts, we're really having a decrease in construction costs and people going out and remodeling their houses and decreased activity as consumers are really just kind of tightening their belts right now. So we think this is a temporary blip and revenue will return to normal over the next couple of fiscal years.
So the heady profligate spending of the last couple of years is going to go away as people get a little more conservative.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, thank you so much.
Okay, wrapping it up with our SCTA budget, our fourth and final budget. So SCTA is where all 16 staff members are housed and we're all SCTA employees. We're in manageable financial shape. Here's our org chart that shows the 16 staff. There will be some changes upon the retirement of Suzanne, but from a budget standpoint, this is what we have in our budget that will sustain us for the ongoing fiscal year. Changes that have happened between 23 and 24 are highlighted here. Essentially what was reported to the board in May, we're wrapping up things on Highway 101. So there's a decrease in the great mitigation fees. There's a decrease in our regional bike share program. We're spreading those funds over 2 separate fiscal years now. And there's been increases as we advance the State Route 121 8th Street East interchange with the federal earmark that we got recently. And then as well as the Bayron specialist position, Anna, that was introduced to you earlier at the meeting. On the expenditure side, there's been an increase in consultants that has been offset by a major reduction in contributions to other governments. Those contributions to other governments essentially are associated with wrapping up the great mitigation fees on Highway 101, as well as the Marin Sonoma, as well as the Highway 37 design funds that have gone out to MTC to do the design on Highway 37. No major changes from the preliminary budget. I will highlight the 3 minor changes from the preliminary budget, which are essentially we're going to put out an RFP for legislative support. We're planning on doing a salary survey, and we've also incorporated the VMT mitigation banking contract that we got a grant for recently. So this table here summarizes the changes since our preliminary budget. And staff's recommendation is to approve the SCTA budget as well as the three prior budgets that have been presented to you. And if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions from the board?
Thanks, James. Could you just remind us of the status of bike share?
Absolutely. So it's gone through some fits and starts with regard to contracting. The status right now is the RFP has been responded to, and they will be conducting interviews to select a contract vendor. So once the contract vendor is selected, then the budget in front of you essentially expends half of those dollars this fiscal year and the other half of those dollars next fiscal year for the implementation. If you'd like more detail than that, I'd be happy to have Dana, who's the project manager for that, give you some additional backup.
Just one other question, and that would be the ETA of actually seeing these in operation.
It's never good when it's not a simple answer.
Inquiring mind.
Yeah, I'll try to answer that as best as I can. You know, since we don't have a contractor on board yet, we can't be exactly sure, but we have done. You know, we did under the last contract do some planning that will hopefully get us, you know, a step further once we do have that firm under contract. So, I mean, I would personally look out for, you know, springtime, but that's to be determined.
Okay, thank you.
Good, Director Calvi.
Yeah, okay.
Can I just ask a follow-on question to that? Don't go too far. How many firms responded to the RFP?
Yes, and we do actually have some interviews set up this week, later this week.
What is the quantity?
Oh, the quantity that responded. There were 4 firms that responded.
Good.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, let's go to public comment then on our budgets. I don't see anybody making a move towards the microphone. Any hands on Zoom?
No hands are raised on the Zoom chair.
I'll bring it back and see if we can get a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Director Rabbit.
Second. Oops.
I'm going to give the second to Director Cater Thompson. All in favor? Any opposed? Those pass. Thank you so much. Let's move on to item 5.4.
So item 5.4 is an administrative housekeeping item with regard to our personnel policies. We are separate from the county, but we do mirror the county's benefit system and do contract with them to provide those benefits to staff. 3 sections have been updated within our personnel policies. The first one is salaries and leaves. This is with regard to sick leave, as well as maximum accrual allowed. I do want to point out a typo within the board packet, whereas in section 3.14, the information in the table is correct, whereas the written information in the paragraph is incorrect. So the table language is what's being recommended today. Section 5, health and welfare. This is essentially the changes to benefit costs, so the employer's share of the benefit that staff receives for health benefits. And then the final one is the salary schedule section, which is the salary schedule that has been approved by the board actually back in May of 21, but this officially amends those documents into our personnel policies. With that, I would recommend that the board approve resolution 2023-29 with the described edits to section 3.14. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the board? Any public comments? Seeing none, bring it back for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Director Judice, second from Director Rabbit. All in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. I heard an aye from these. All right, we'll move on to item 5.5. This is our resolution of commendation for Suzanne Smith. Director Rabbit, you've been the longest serving on the board. Would you like to read the resolution? Drew's got it over here.
Did you write it?
Only if the executive director would like that.
I don't think she gets much of a choice. There's a,
It's packet page 179 if you want to pull it up.
here, to David.
Oh, I got it here too. Yeah, thank you. Small print, lots of whereases, appropriately so. Obviously a resolution commemorating and thanking you for your years of service here in Sonoma County. I think you have left the county a much better place, so thank you for that. So whereas Suzanne Smith has served as Executive Director of the Sonoma County Transportation Authority since 1997, and whereas Suzanne Smith was hired as the organization's first independent executive director, has grown the team to 16 curated employees, and worked tirelessly to plan, fund, and implement crucial transportation and climate projects and programs in Sonoma County. And whereas Suzanne Smith was instrumental in hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of legislation, including the founding legislation for Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit District, or SMART, and the Sonoma County Regional Climate Protection Authority, RCPA. And whereas after 3 unsuccessful transportation ballot measure attempts in Sonoma County, Suzanne Smith led the organization process that created the Measure M Traffic Relief Act and worked to include it on the 2004 ballot, where it passed by more than 2/3 of the vote, establishing the Measure M quarter-cent sales tax that has been successful in improving transportation, transit safety, and the widening of Highway 101 for carpool lanes. And whereas Suzanne Smith led the creation of and has served as RCPA Executive Director since its establishment in 2009. And whereas Suzanne Smith has made and maintained effective partnerships with agencies and elected officials in Sonoma County, the Bay Area, the state of California, and the United States. We need you worldwide now. Whereas the SCTA RCPA has been skillfully managed and directed by Suzanne Smith through economic downturns, the COVID-19 pandemic, and a multitude of other challenges. And whereas in the first attempt at reauthorization in 2020, Suzanne Smith successfully led the organization process, extending Measure M for another 20 years as the Go Sonoma Act, tripling the investment in bikeway and pathways and doubling the investments in local roads and transit. And whereas SCTA RCPA have benefited greatly from Suzanne Smith's leadership, positivity, political expertise, and unflinching work ethic, which will have a lasting influence on the community and the region for years to come. And whereas during all of her time leading SCTA RCPA, Suzanne Smith has served with integrity, foresight, thoughtfulness, and unquestionable dedication. Now, therefore, be resolved that the Sonoma County Transportation Authority and the Regional Climate Protection Authority do hereby express appreciation for the years of service given by Suzanne Smith as the Executive Director. Suzanne, thank you so much for all of your public service.
So
Thank
we,
you.
we do have a resolution that is signed by all of your board members currently. And after the meeting, we're going to invite all board members, all staff, all public that are here to take a photo with you, if they would like. But I'm going to turn it over to you for a couple of words if you'd like.
Thank you so much. I feel very appreciated. I'm glad to have had this opportunity. It's been it's been a great career. I'm blessed to have been selected for this role. And I think it was risky hiring me. I didn't have a ton of experience in transportation, like hardly any. But the board sought someone out to go advocate on behalf of Sonoma County and on behalf of transportation, later on behalf of climate. And I think they saw in me that ability, and I am forever grateful that they trusted me to do that. Fast forward to today, I'm extremely proud of the team that we have here. It's been my, absolute pleasure to work with them, to hire them, to commiserate with them, to laugh with them. They're just a great group of people that the county is lucky to have caring about the work that they do on behalf of the community. I've been to almost 300 board meetings. So not totally sad. This is my last one. But they've all been helpful and educational and informative and advanced the work that this agency is charged with doing. And so my appreciation to the board is very deep. A lot of you volunteer your time. You don't get paid to be on this board. You choose to think regionally outside of just your district or your jurisdiction. And that is a critical part of local government because we don't operate just within the confines or boundaries of our cities or even the county or your district. We have to work together, and that collaboration is what this agency is all about. So having elected officials who see that and appreciate that and want to be part of that, who will come to these board meetings and engage and know the work, is really meaningful to the community, and it makes the staff appreciate the work that they do even more, and it helps us advance that cause. This is a team that if you give us direction, we want to deliver on it. We want to make this community a better place. So having you in those chairs, doing that work, guiding us and providing that leadership is critical as well. So thank you for that. And it's been great. I'm proud of the work that we've been able to do. And I know that you've got a lot of good work ahead of you in the future, both at the board level and with this team behind me. They're gonna take you far. So thank you so much.
I'm going to open it up, Director Cater Thompson.
I finally am calling you Suzanne Smith instead of Suzanne Wilford, which I did forever. But I feel like we go back many, many years, and I just really appreciate watching you in this role. And I really appreciate that you're going to be retiring and having a life outside of city government. But it has just been a real pleasure knowing you for so many years with that meeting in Petaluma with Senator Burton's staff and walking the railroad tracks. And I just really appreciated anytime you would call, you were always gracious and open up a time to meet. So thank you so much for your service and happy retirement.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Let's go to public comment then and see if there's anybody. I think that we have some people here who would like to make some comments, if I had to guess.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm standing in front of you here
as a historical monument. Because I've been around all the time. And I have observed your current executive director in many situations. And she's always conducted herself with grace, with dignity. And as she just said, backed by a staff. And when she first started, I accused her that she was going to be establishing an empire. Did I not? I did. Because back then, there weren't so many staff people. But as the work has increased and the obligations to our community have increased, the staff that she has assembled, as has previously been noted, and I will note it also, has been, excellent, get the job done, and fun to be around. And if there's anything that I've always valued in public services, you're allowed to have a laugh as well as dealing with serious matters. And we got through the battles of the 1990s and these measures that were mentioned in the resolution that didn't pass. But I think we can now observe that there are 3 lanes all the way. Is that true on 101? And seeking out monies from CTC and various sources. And that's a great accomplishment given the political headwinds that were faced over these past decades. There was even a trip to Copenhagen to attend a COP, Conference of the Parties, and we survived that. Looking back, and I'm now standing in front of you as a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee, and we were able to suitably embarrass Suzanne at that last meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee. The chair forgot it was our last meeting, but I was there to remind him that it needed to be acknowledged. And so I made a point of having the Citizens Advisory Committee acknowledge these, one can say, decades of service. But the last thing I'll say is that she's been a great friend, a great person to work with, but a great friend. And it's been a great honor to have been associated as past chair of this organization and a member from year to year as many things were accomplished. Thanks to the current executive director. You'll be relieved to know that the person you have hired is of good lineage. His name is Cameron. His father is from Dundee. And I don't know if any of you have ever met James's father, but he's a force to be reckoned with. And once you've met Mr. Cameron from Dundee, you'll know where James is coming from. So you're going to be in good hands, and you've been in grand hands. So thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Steve?
Thank you. Steve Bertelbaugh. I first met Suzanne when Smart was trying to keep the doors open in 2003. We needed to find a source of funding, and George Ellman brought me into the office, and Suzanne was willing to put a small sliver of money in Measure M to keep the doors open and the business going. That carried us through to 2 more measures on the ballot. And it really surprised me in each of those how difficult it was to convince people that we really needed to have a train here. So I really, speaking for everybody that has worked on the SMART project, thank you to Suzanne for keeping us alive. And we've got lots more to do. And I hope James can carry us through. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have any hands on Zoom, Drew?
I currently do not see any members with their hands up on Zoom chair.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board. I just want to say thank you. I've loved working with you, Suzanne, not just with SCTA, but also, I don't know if you all know this, but Suzanne watches public meetings that she doesn't even have items up for. And when I happen, and when I happen to be participating in them, I'll get out of the meeting to just a stream of sarcastic and oftentimes memes from Suzanne about the proceedings. And I don't think she can help herself, but I don't think she'll be able to help herself in retirement either. But I've loved every moment of working with you. And I know none of us actually represent your district that isn't represented on the board. And I am 100% certain that all of us will absolutely hear from you nonetheless.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
With that, we're gonna go ahead and recess for a couple minutes, go take a photo. We'll come back for reports and announcements after the fact, but let's. On a resolution? No.
No.
Yes.
Just didn't want it to go and we didn't do it at Wednesday.
Yeah, the board has chosen not to approve the combination. But we'll recess and we'll come back in about 5 minutes. All right, thanks, Drew. Go ahead and call the roll to reestablish our quorum.
Director Melanie Bagby,
Present.
Director Susan Harvey,
Here.
Director Ariel Kelly,
Here.
Director Janice Cater Thompson,
Here.
Director Gerard Giudice,
Here.
Director Nisa Hinton,
Here.
Director Sandra Lowe,
Here.
Director Rosa Reynosa,
Here.
Director Chris Corsi,
Here.
Director David Rabbit,
Here.
Vice Chair Linda Hopkins,
Present.
and Chair Chris Rogers.
Here.
And
So-
quorum.
Before we took a break, we had a motion and a second. We do just have to confirm, all in favor? Any opposed? Excellent. Director Corsi was going to call for a roll call vote, so I appreciate him not doing that. With that, we'll move on to our reports and announcements, items 6.1 through 6.4.
So the advisory committee agenda, sorry. The advisory committee agendas were in your packet. There was an executive committee earlier today covering a couple of items related to the budgets and the climate ad hoc. So that will be future, well, the budget was on the agenda today. The climate ad hoc will be future discussion probably early next year. And that takes us to the regional agency reports, Mr. Chair.
Do we have anybody who wants to make a report on a regional entity?
The bridge is up and standing. Cars are going across, not as many as used to. Strategic plan, we do thank you for the input. And as I think I mentioned prior, the bridge strategic plan has always been a little different animal. It used to only be a financial document. It was broadened this year with President Theriault of the board wanting to get additional input. But look for, I think we had literally 400 separate line items of suggestions going forward that we're filtering through, categorizing, and then being brought back. So look for constant kind of refinement there, and look forward to that process kind of coming to a conclusion and being brought to the entire bridge board. That's it.
All right, let's move on to our activities reports. Ross, go ahead and kick us off.
Good afternoon, directors. The following is a brief overview of the communications and outreach activity during the previous month. So RCPA staff conducted a climate protection initiative listening session in September in partnership with the Asian American Pacific Islander Coalition of Sonoma County. This hybrid meeting was hosted at the Sonoma Clean Power Advanced Energy Center. After a brief presentation on RCPA and the Climate Protection Initiative, attendees were asked about climate-related questions, concerns and priorities in their communities, and what they thought of RCPA's proposed solutions. So the feedback received will help inform the Climate Protection Initiative efforts moving forward. SCTA staff continued outreach to community-based organizations asking for partnership in developing the countywide active transportation plan. This is the first step in an engagement plan created by consultant Fair and Pierce in assistance with SCTA. The Go Sonoma sales tax measure project fact sheets were created and added to the SCTA website. The goal here is to inform the public and project partners about the current and future projects funded by the Go Sonoma tax measure. These fact sheets will be updated regularly as the projects move forward. And lastly, SCTA RCPA had a tabling presence at Los Cien's annual event, the State of the Latinx Community presentation on September 28th at Sonoma State. This event drew a large amount of community, local leaders and community partners. Staff presented bilingual materials promoting the countywide active transportation plan survey and ongoing RCPA climate protection initiative efforts. Please let me know if you have any questions on these or other communications or engagement topics. Thank you very much.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, I was curious about the sort of ATP community information that's going on. I just learned that there's some coming up in October. It sounds like starting with Cloverdale. And then I realized that maybe there are some that just occurred in September. And I wonder if you provide a little update on that. I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, so this is for the active transportation plan. Yeah, so this basically at this point, we're trying to get people to take the survey. And so that was what the main materials we had at Los Cien. And then I believe Fair and Pierce was at an event in Glen Ellen this last Saturday. I do have a full list of the planned engagement as well as the overall engagement plan that was created if you'd like to take a look.
I would love to see that. And I would love to maybe potentially add a meeting or two, because from what I saw, the sort of main unincorporated community meeting is actually taking place in Santa Rosa at a Sonoma County BPAC meeting, which is not really sort of the community, and Brown Act is not really necessarily the best format to get community engagement and feedback. So, I mean, I would love to, provide some staff support and host some kind of a town hall in West County to try to get the word out and to kind of focus on, different areas that might be interested in more active transportation work.
That would be very helpful. I'll send you over the details to you and Jason.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ross? Great. Let's go on to our climate change report with Tanya.
Good afternoon. So in addition to the work that you heard the update from BC on the GHG inventory and climate dashboard, I wanted to highlight 3 items from the activities report. First is related to BayREN. So you met Anna at the beginning of the meeting as our new team member, and she's going to be focused about 40% of her time supporting Chris on the Water Upgrade Safe program, and the other 60% of her time is going to be for a new BayREN liaison service that we intend to directly benefit your jurisdictions. And this is a new service that we're rolling out with our additional BayREN funding in 2024. And it's been designed to ensure city and county staff can take full advantage of BayREN's extensive efficiency and clean energy services to benefit your residents and municipal operations. And I should say, this is a new service that we're piloting here in Sonoma County. And if all goes well, we hope that it can be replicated across the Bay Area and the other counties. So we're really taking a leadership role with this new program and are delighted to have Anna on staff to help take that lead role. There'll be 3 areas of focus for Anna's new role as the BayREN liaison. First is related to communication services. So she'll be putting together ready to share BayREN information on workshops, incentive programs, and other programs that could be sent out easily by your staff through your established city communication channels. Second area is with climate policy support. So our goal is to be able to provide your jurisdictions and all of you with city and town and county specific information about the utilization of Bay Rent programs in your jurisdiction. So you can see really how those incentives are being utilized, how your residents are taking advantage of them, and where some opportunities might be to further spread their use. And then lastly, equity policy support. We want to work closely with your staff to understand your equity goals and with you as well, and then help guide Bay Rent programs to better meet those equity goals. So as the programs are being developed and evolved, we're providing that input to those programs. So in terms of next steps, Anna is getting ready to meet with climate staff in each of your jurisdictions to learn more about your climate goals, how Bay Rent services are currently being used, and start identifying opportunities to strengthen their use within your jurisdictions and help really support your climate goals. So we're really excited about this new program, and we'll certainly share more with you as it develops. Second main area I wanted to highlight is related to funding. And this is a grant program that we recently applied to with help from a number of your jurisdictions and your staff. It is the Office of Planning and Research's Regional Resilience Planning Grant Program. So we coordinated work with a group of staff from across Sonoma County to develop an application to this grant program. And the team decided to submit a proposal for funding to develop a regional microgrid strategy. And the idea of the project is that it would conduct a regional feasibility study to determine the optimal microgrid locations to improve local energy resilience against climate-driven disasters with a focus on our vulnerable and under-resourced communities. Now, this project will directly support objectives in RCPA's climate mobilization strategy, as well as in other local climate action plans. So it was really a solution that kind of bubbled up as something that's needed across the county. If we're selected for the grant award and funded, the idea is to launch the program in 2024, and it would include representation from your jurisdictions, as well as 2 local community-based organizations that signed on to be partners with us in this effort. And they are the Sonoma County Community Organizations Active in Disaster, or COAD, and Nuestra Comunidad. And we also have funding in the grant proposal to support participation by other CBOs. And an initial part of the project would be reaching out and getting additional CBOs involved in the effort to have full countywide coverage. I want to highlight this effort as a great example of countywide collaboration. This opportunity came forward fairly late in the application process, but the team of staff that came together around this topic really rallied and worked night and day to put the grant proposal together. I want to give a special shout out to the city of Rohnert Park, who was able to offer some grant writing consultants to really help support the effort. So it was a great proposal and a great effort. We expect to hear results later this fall, and if awarded, we would start work in 2024. And then lastly, other climate funding opportunities. There's 2 that I want to highlight for you. There's an EPA climate pollution reduction grant. And this is a program that funding was provided to the highest population MSAs in California and across the country to develop a planning grant. And so for the Bay Area, Sonoma County is not part of one of those areas that got this funding, but we're partnering closely with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, which is working on a plan with that funding. RCPA is representing Sonoma County in this effort. And the key piece here is that we want to be involved in this process so that when the implementation funding becomes available, our needs are represented in the plan that the Air District is working on. It's a fairly tight time frame. The plan that the Air District is putting together is due to the EPA by March of 2024. And then the grant process begins in early spring. And so the team that's working on this is really trying to identify some key projects that we could put forward for funding. So I'll keep you informed on that. And then lastly, to let you know that the Air District will be conducting a series of workshops to get additional feedback. And I have given the Air District names of staff from all of your jurisdictions to invite to these workshops to make sure that we get good participation from Sonoma County. And then lastly, wanted to highlight that Cal EVIP 2.0, which is the EV charging funding at the state, is now available for high-speed DC fast charger rebates through the CEC's Golden State Priority Project. These rebates are available for up to 50% of a project's total approved costs and are exclusively for chargers that are located in disadvantaged or low-income communities. There's 19 million total in funding available for counties in the northern region. And this includes Sonoma County, and the deadline to apply is December 12th, 2023. Now, they are looking for shovel-ready projects, but this is a great opportunity if you have some projects in your jurisdictions to apply for funding. And lastly, I wanted to highlight that Sonoma Clean Power is looking to partner with local jurisdictions on applications, and there should be a message coming out from Sonoma Clean Power this week, is my understanding, with more information on those, on what Sonoma Clean Power is doing to support that program. So that concludes my report, and I welcome any questions that you have.
Any questions from the board? All right, thank you so much, Tanya. Chris, come on up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Directors. So I'll be providing a brief update on planning activities that planning staff have been engaged in over the last month. So let's start out with the active transportation plan. So things are well underway as part of this process right now. And the project website is live, which includes basic project information, a list of upcoming meetings and important dates, a short interactive survey, and a mapping tool that users can actually visit and draw points to identify safety issues and recommendations for improvements as part of the active transportation plan outreach. And Dana and project consultants, Fair and Peers, have been very busy and making the rounds to planning commissions and local bicycle advisory boards and presenting on the project, including early information on existing conditions, an overview on the technical approach to the project, and a preliminary look at traffic level stress findings. So a lot going on right there. If you haven't visited the website, I encourage you to take a look at that. Moving on to regional planning and funding, I wanted to make you aware of an upcoming funding program through MPC, the CARE program, or Community Action Resource and Empowerment Program, which is an evolution of the Lifeline Transportation Funding Program that'll be awarding $21 million across the region to implement community-based transportation projects. So these are projects that have been identified in community-oriented planning efforts, like our community-based transportation plans here in Sonoma County, and they're located in regional designated equity priority communities. So MDC is planning on launching a call for projects for the program at the end of October with a application due date of January 15th, 2024. So we've been talking to your local staff about this program, so they should be aware of those dates. So moving on to Plan Bay Area 2050 plus. So staff have been very engaged in this process as it moves forward. There have been a lot of meetings going on, focusing on existing and anticipated population and travel trends, the technical approach to the plan update, priority conservation areas, and the transit-oriented communities policy. Moving on to clean vehicles, SCTA RCPA sponsored the 2023 Clean Fleet Expo down at the Marin County Fairgrounds. So we included a picture of the exhibit hall there, where a number of light and heavy electric vehicles were on display. And some experts and fleet managers that have been in the trenches dealing with vehicle procurement were able to provide some tips on how to get through that procurement process and build charging infrastructure at the local level. So, and I know a lot of local fleet managers from Sonoma County and other staff were able to participate in that event. Moving on to transit integration. So SCTA staff have been working with local transit operators to review the initial project recommendations, gather some transit usage data, and work on unified web development and branding. So moving on to safe routes to school, the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition continues to host learn to ride and bike rodeo events across the county. And they've been organizing and facilitating safe routes to school task forces in Santa Rosa and Petaluma to coordinate on safe routes to school issues. And then finally, wrapping up with the commute reward program, staff continues to support travel demand management programs and emergency ride home programs through gosonoma.org. And we've included some recent statistics in the planning activities report in the agenda for your information. So with that, I'll conclude my report and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions for Chris? Thank you so much. Let's move on to our projects and planning report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, directors. I'm here to give you the projects and programming activities report, which is included in your agenda packet. I just want to provide a few highlights for you. First being on Highway 116 and 121, SCTA continues to coordinate with we're continue to coordinate utility relocation, project impact mitigations, and property owner concerns. We will be meeting with some of the property owners out there this week. And construction is being coordinated with the utility relocation and could be dependent upon weather. For the Hearn Avenue interchange project, the Caltrans advertised the project and bids were opened on, it was advertised on August 14th. Bids were opened on October 4th. Bids came in below engineer's estimate by almost $900,000, so yay. The total bid was for 25.1 million and was awarded to Gelati Construction. And finally, I did want to bring up that construction is underway on a Caltrans capital preventative maintenance project on Highway 12, State Route 12 in Santa Rosa from Llano to Farmers Lane. And Caltrans has successfully executed at least one full closure. And they are planning another for October 20th through 22nd. We are working with the first responders in order to make sure that they have access through the full closure, even when the lanes are closed. And there will be one final closure, which will be the closure that I'm talking about on October 20th through 22nd will be west of Highway 101. And then there will be one more closure, full closure, and that will include the interchange at Highway 12 and 101. And that is being planned for November, but it is subject to weather delays. So that one hasn't been set yet. That concludes my report. There are many other details in the staff in the agenda packet, but those are the highlights. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any additional questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go on to announcements from board members. Does anybody have an announcement for today? Seeing none, we'll go to public comment for reports and announcements. Anybody in person? Seeing no one. Anybody on Zoom? Great, we'll bring it back and we'll adjourn today's meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.